Hey, Damian Mason here with a question before we hop into this episode of the Business of Agriculture. If you farm for a living, you employ a lot of amazing technology, from your inputs that you put into the soil to the tractor that you sit in, your combine, and the amazing data that it harvests. But has your soil analytics kept up technologically with everything else in your farming operation? I would venture to say that no, it is not. Sure, you check for your nitrogen, your phosphorus, your potassium, your micronutrients as well. But what about disease pressure? Do you know what diseases and what pests you're going to face next year? No, you don't. But you can now figure that out with Pattern Ag's predictive analytics. Think about it. They can tell you now with testing what the likelihood of facing nasty diseases, things like cyst nematode or sudden death syndrome, what the likelihood of you having this in your field. Then you know how to prepare, how to treat, and where to invest your money. It's using technology to make you bigger yields and therefore make you bigger money. Go to www.pattern.ag to learn more. They are pioneering the way in predictive agronomy. Well, hey there. Thanks for joining us for another episode of the Business of Agriculture, and not just a podcast. As you know, it's also a video. I'm on YouTube. If you want to check out the video, go to YouTube. It's the Damian Mason channel. Just hit subscribe. Doesn't cost you anything, and I would love to have you there. Also, we are now putting these up on Acres TV. And Brian and Darren Hefty of Ag PhD launched a media platform called Acres TV, and they asked me if I would contribute my content there, and I'm very happy that they made the invitation to me to do so. So would you please go and check out videos of the Business of Agriculture at Acres TV, but also share around the audio podcast wherever you get your podcast. Share them with somebody you think that can benefit from them. Got a great episode today. We're talking about a look at the future of production agriculture with some 30-year-old eyes. This guy, Roush, I knew him when he was a kid. My first farm property I owned was in a neighboring county to where I live now. And I met this kid, and he's a sharp guy, and you think, man, I knew him like a long, long time ago. And here he is, this grown man. He's got 3 children of his own. He's a farm operator, about 6,000 or so acres, 4th generation in Wells County, Indiana, and a couple other adjoining counties. He knows my brother, who works for the Farm Service Agency, because he does some business with them in the neighboring county. And I thought, you know what, Luke, I want to hear perspective. 4th generation, 30-year-old guy. What do you and your peers see? What do you think? What do you feel about production agriculture that might vary from my generation? So we're going to get into that. But before we do, real quickly, what did I miss biographically?
Hi, I'm Luke Roush. We live in Southern Wells County here. And like I said, I've known Damian for all my life. We farm in 4 different counties, have a livestock farm. We have 8,000 head of pigs, also have beef cattle. That's about it. So
you mostly do direct to consumer on the beef, right? You're not like a feed yard where you're selling these things on the rail. It's mostly direct to consumer, smaller scale beef.
Yep. All to local butchers.
And your hog facilities are vertically integrated contract production. You don't own the pigs. You put in the work, you feed them, you make sure they're alive, and then you get paid per pig per day, and you get the manure for your fields, right?
Yep, exactly.
And by the way, I remember when those deals came to that part of the world, and I'm like, those numbers aren't really that big of numbers, but you know what? You've got some spare time. You can justify doing it, but the manure is worth more than it used to be, right?
It is. We call it liquid gold. Yeah, it is great.
How many acres, just out of curiosity, out of those, is 2 big hog barns?
4 2,000 heads.
Four 2,000 head hog barns. How many acres worth of manure, or how many acres do you utilize to get the manure out of those buildings?
Between 300 and 400 a year. And then the farms adjoining the hog barns, we split every other year, if that makes sense.
Yeah. Well, you can't over apply. You know, the old thing about livestock production, usually the fields nearest the source have triple the amount of phosphates that you really need. And then the stuff that's 4 miles away has a complete lack of any organic matter because you're not putting the manure. So, yeah, you drag line that?
Yep. Lease brothers do. Yep.
Okay, for the person that doesn't know what that means, explain drag line for manure application.
Okay, basically there's a pump that goes inside of your liquid pits, and there's a giant hose, 10-inch diameter hose, that is fueled by a manure pump going to an applicator in the field, and you set your rate, and normally it goes off of speed. but they have rate controllers, and you set your rate and you drive along. And the one that they use is a disc holder bar, so it incisions the ground maybe 3-4 inches deep, gets it in there to where it's not sitting on top of the ground, so you don't have to worry about leaching and all that good stuff. So
And it usually keeps the neighbors a little happier because if you can put the manure in 3 inches into the soil, you mitigate. It doesn't eliminate, but it reduces or mitigates odor. Yeah.
yeah, they appreciate it. So
These hog barns, what, 15 years now?
yes, be more than that, '06 and '08. So
Yeah.
yeah, we're climbing.
And since we didn't bring you on here just to talk about that, but it's kind of like a side revenue source. You know,
Yes.
in the old days, you'd say, okay, these people are grain farmers and they fed hogs. And that's kind of what you do now. But in the old days, it was free market. And in the 90s, before you were born, we saw, actually you were born, but in the late 90s, we saw a complete washout where some poor independent guy out here has 3 truckloads of hogs that are selling for 7 cents a pound, and his cost in them is like 58 cents a pound, totally get washed just with like one barn load of hogs, washed them. So we pretty much got rid of most of the free market hog producers, is my understanding. You're on a contractual arrangement. Where do your pigs come from?
They're coming from southern Missouri, Illinois border, Carthage, Illinois.
Okay. And you don't have any obligation to market them or nothing. They just come in when they're little piglets, and then
Yep.
you got to you keep them alive and keep them healthy.
Yep, we get them when they're between 10 and 14 pounds, and they leave when they're between 275, 300, about 6 months.
It's an interesting deal. Back in the old days, you'd buy feeder pigs and they'd be minimum of about 35 pounds. And now they're bringing them to you when they're 10 to 14 pounds.
Yes.
So that's a change from the old days. You get paid per pig per day. And it kind of is more like it's a cash flow vehicle versus a pure profit vehicle, I guess, for you. And then again, there's the manure, right?
Yes, yes. And I think it's important to be very diverse in today's markets. You know, we talked about it the other day. We lost 60 cents in the grain market, gained 80 the next week. How do you market that? And that kind of controls some cash flow with maybe you didn't hit the high, maybe you didn't hit the low.
Mm-hmm.
And it keeps you a lot more, like I said, diverse.
The diversification of revenue streams is something that the person that has a normal job doesn't even think about, and they don't realize that they're pretty vulnerable. You know, people used to say that to me a long time ago when I was a political comedian. Well, what's going to happen when Bill Clinton's not in office? I'm like, well, what's going to happen when your company moves to Mexico?
Yep.
You know, we're all in the same boat. So
Right.
you're into the diversification. You don't work by yourself. I kept saying you're 4th generation. So I know your grandpa, I know your old man.
Yeah.
Didn't know the one before that. You're the 4th generation. Who works on the operation? What's the operation look like right now? 6,300 acres, 4 hog barns, a smaller scale beef direct to consumer. Is there anything else? Backyard chickens?
No backyard chickens. No, actually, my grandpa just retired. 2022 is his last year. And so now it's just my dad and I, and then currently we have 3 employees, and hopefully we can add another one before spring. We're going to try to get that done.
Luke, right now, everybody in the world is talking about how it's hard to get employees. And, you know, I'm around non-ag people like out here where I live in Arizona half the year. And they think this is a symptom for like the dry cleaners or for the fast food restaurant, and it is. And I said, imagine if you were trying to have a livestock operation and you're in rural America, you've got a smaller pool to pull from, and it's also hard work and it stinks.
Yep.
And that's just for the hogs, which you need an employee to also drive a truck, right?
Yeah, right, exactly.
What's your problem? Why don't you have that 4th employee? Is it because nobody will sign up? Because what's the reason why you right now don't have that 4th employee?
Well, I think just like you talked about, one, nobody really wants to work hard anymore, and 2, it's kind of hard to just throw anybody into a multi-million-dollar, could be a multi-million-dollar machine,
Yeah.
and just say, you know, here you go. And what we're spoiled in right now is the people that work for us now have done this their whole life. You can't just learn how to do some of this stuff. You know what I mean?
I know what you mean, and probably most of the people listening know what you mean. I have this discussion all the time with non-ag folks when I say, you realize that there might be a piece of equipment, granted, it's got auto steer and GPS and all sorts of amazing technology, but I said that machine might also be a $700,000 piece of equipment. Are you go grab somebody from the temp agency?
Yeah.
If a person screws up a cheeseburger at Burger King, it's a goddamn cheeseburger. If you screw up a $700,000 spray rig, we're screwed.
Yeah. And especially in today's market, you might not be able to get another one. Supply and demand, all that. We don't have that luxury anymore. There's not spare equipment just sitting down in the lots ready for you to buy it or rent it if you have a problem.
Yeah, that's the thing also, and it's been an issue with the whole supply chain, and then farm economics have been amazing, which means farm economics, then smart farm operators, like you say, if we've got this good revenue, let's go ahead and re-up the fleet. So then it was already tight supply because of supply chains and distortions. And then it was, damn it, we got some money. Let's go ahead and re-up the fleet. There's a lot of demand right now for farm machinery.
And you can't, say for example, right now, if you order a John Deere tractor, you might not get it till 2024. Well, just because you have the money in 2022 doesn't mean you're going to have the money in 2024.
Yeah. So it's one of those. You cover a lot of acres. Do you try to do a thing on machinery where you're just every year we're going to look at replacing this? We're just, even though it might be good for another couple of years, maybe we just should be in that thing of every year, because you got to make sure you're from a cash flow and from a modernization of equipment. What's your method?
Our strategy is to keep the planters and the combines new, up to date. The tractors, we let them, if maybe it's a lemon, try to get rid of it. If not, we'll run a tractor 2,000-3,000 hours. But our main goal is to try to keep our most labor intensive stuff like a combine and a planter. Yeah. And that's what I don't think people realize is a new combine right now is $700,000 with no grain heads.
Yeah.
And you run it for 2 months and it sits in the barn for 10 months. It's like, it's hard to bite that pill. So
it's a bunch of money tied up. And one of the things I was going to ask you about, I was going to get into weaknesses and strengths. I asked you before we hit record the other day, I was on with you and I said, are you the business guy or the production guy? You said production, but you're talking right now about business decisions. When you just talked about hours and then managing or utilizing the machinery and then the outlay of capital, those are business discussions. It's hard to separate the two. Most people are really good at one or really like to focus on one versus the other. You like to focus on production.
Yes, I do. I would say I'm better at production because normally every day I'm the one leading everybody around what we're going to do. Dad sits in the office more than I do. Like when it comes to buying chemicals, fertilizer, stuff like that. But I'd say we offset each other pretty good. And I do think about the equipment side. It's just I would say he's more heavy into that than I am, and then I'm more of the production guy.
They asked me a long time ago when I started out in comedy if I was a writer or performer, and I said, well, I'm both. And they said, yeah, we get that. But if you're going to make in this business, you got to know what your actual strength is and then try to cover for the other. And so right. I understood that. Your strength is production. If your old man goes away tomorrow, which we hope doesn't happen, do you think you're strong enough at the business side that if you have to be the guy at the desk a few more hours, you can pick that up?
Yes, I do. Yes, I do.
What do you think that you can, where do you need to improve, or what is it that you think you will do to improve on that? Because the money's big. You're talking about 6,000 acres, let's say, you're going to be laying out in the year 2023. Is it going to cost you $600 an acre to put in an acre of corn?
We just figured this up the other day. It'd be 700 on corn without cash rent. And what was it? 480 on beans without cash rent.
Okay, so $700, not counting cash rent, to put in an acre of corn, and these numbers are astronomical. So you just came up with them, or maybe your dad helped punch them out. The point is, you're already keeping up with that. When there's that kind of numbers, I think the guy that doesn't want to focus on the business is really hurting himself. When you're talking about, put $700 an acre over 6,000 acres, or half of that, 3,000 acres. You're talking about still just $2 million.
Yep. Yeah.
Without counting cash rent. You're coming up with you're going to put $4 million. You're going to spend $4 to $5 million to put in a 2023 crop.
Yeah. Yep.
Does it scare you?
It used to scare me. Now it's just, Damian, when I was younger, I used to think $100 was a lot of money. And now, and I'm not being arrogant when I say this, $100 doesn't buy anything anymore. $100,000 anymore is nothing.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And my grandpa
also,
told me this.
and like you said, you don't sound arrogant. I got people out here in the nicer suburbs in Arizona that, think that they have a good job and they have a nice expensive house. I'm like, I know people that drive pickup trucks and have, grease under their fingernails that are spending multiples of millions of dollars of capital outlay every year. and it's just what you do. Yeah. I actually, it's funny you should say that. I spoke at a big pork conference about 5 years ago, and in the back of the room, I had my books and stuff set up, and I sell some books and crap after I get done talking. And this person was standing there contemplating whether to buy 2 T-shirts or 3. And then they stood there for 5 minutes, and finally I said, just do whatever you want. I don't care. The $20 ain't gonna make me a big difference. And then they said, it's really funny. I make decisions every week where I'm putting 50 grand here, 80 grand here, $100,000 here, and I'm worried about buying a $20 book off your table. So they are big numbers. When you talk about money with your old man or business with your old man, where do you still think that he's got one up on you? Probably because of experience that you're like, yeah, I got to really dial in on this game.
His pencil is sharper than mine, if that makes sense, using that analogy. Mm-hmm. He's very, very good at breaking down numbers, and I think that's why he's where he's at today. Mm-hmm. And sometimes one of my weaknesses, like you have on our sheet here, sometimes I got to slow down a little bit and maybe pay more attention to those details, and where he'll drive himself nuts sharpening his pencil on what he can do here, what he can do there, Mm-hmm. And sometimes I think he needs to get out of that a little bit,
There's a company called Milk Source, massively big dairy production company in Wisconsin, Michigan, and maybe another state. They have 3 partners. One of them is the business guy, one of them is the cow guy, and one of them is the operations and equipment acres guy. Yep. And it's remarkable because when you work with them and then you talk to them, it's pretty obvious that this guy stays in his lane. This guy stays in his lane. They have meetings. They all understand the other one's role, but they also maximize the strength. And that's kind of what you're talking about doing, man.
Yep, exactly. And, we don't always Dad and I don't always see eye to eye. That's just part of working with family. But I think we offset each other very well. So
about grain marketing, when you're talking about the product, the produce from 6,000 acres, it's not insignificant. It's a tremendous amount of bushels. It's a lot of grain bins. It's a lot of grain trucks. Who does the selling?
Well, technically, we're still separate entities. So we sell our own grain, but we talk about it. A lot of times the contract might say Chad Roush or Luke Roush, but a lot of times it'll probably be the same price because we probably did the same thing on the same days, if that makes sense.
Buying inputs.
Yep.
Who does that?
Dad and I, we do it together. He does more of it, but he always asks me what I think.
That's important, and it's good to have a level of respect for each other's perspective on that. Employee management. You said you got 3 employees. You'd like to have 4. Yep. Who's the better manager of employees, you or him?
I am. And he'll tell you that I'm a better people person than he is, and I think he'll admit that.
Well, maybe, I don't know. I'll call him up later and ask.
Oh, you will? Yeah, you will. He'll probably cuss me.
No, I'm not going to call him and ask him. When you talked about getting employees is difficult, and then also the fact that you can't just grab somebody, like we said, from the temp agency. It's one thing to say we're going to put you on the end of a shovel, but putting you, even those hog barns.
Yep.
The person that thinks, oh, well, you're just going to have them go in there and do some work in the hog barn. If you are too busy to be in that hog barn watching them for about 3 days, you can kill a barn full of hogs by being incompetent, truly. Yes, so you can't just bring in somebody that is inept.
Yeah, exactly. And then for example, the hog barns. Say all those pigs are 280 pounds at 90 cents, and then take that by 2,000 a barn. That adds up pretty good to a big chunk of change,
Yeah, and you'll lose your contract in a very short order on
Yeah,
your integrator if you mess up 280 pound, if you 2,000 hogs that are ready for market at 90 cents.
yeah.
What do you think when it comes to about the management of the employees? What do you think that they need that you're better at than your old man? Because you'd say, okay, well, I'm younger and maybe our employees are younger. Is it a generational thing or is it just a matter of being an employee manager and some people got it and some people don't? Because I'm no, I just, I don't. Whether they're my age or whether they're 25-year-olds, I'm not sure that I'm a great employee manager.
Um, and this is not a bad characteristic of my dad. When we get busy, I think he sometimes forgets that they have a life outside of the farm, And I'm not talking about spring and fall. I'm talking about 2 weeks after we get done planting, for example, we're trying to get the equipment clean, put away, and get out of the summer heat.
Mm-hmm.
If it's 4 o'clock, let the guys go home if we don't have anything pressing to do. Me and you can do the spraying, or oh, we got to get this done. We got to get this done. I think sometimes that's where he forgets, and it's like, hey, they don't need to live here. They just spent 2 weeks of hell getting the crop put out.
There's, by the way, that's something that is hard. I'm not a great manager of employees, and it's not because of that. It's more that it's just that it's a curse of self-employed. I've been self-employed for so long that then managing it's not that I'm out there yelling and screaming at them. It's just that I've gotten so good at just doing stuff myself that it's hard to delegate very well. Before we go any further, we're going to get back to the employees. We're going to hear some more from my man, Luke Roush, here about being a 30-year-old farm operator and some of the things he's seeing. I want to talk to you about Truterra. They're a company that's come on here to sponsor the Business of Agriculture podcast. They are basically an ecosystem services. So you got your crop you sell, you've got your corn, your soybeans, your wheat, whatever it is. But you know what if you can make money off of those acres besides just the commodity? What if you can get paid to sequester carbon? What if you can get paid to reduce your nitrogen usage? Those are the things that are on the horizon. Right now, nitrogen's on the horizon. They have a pilot program. And you know what? If you cut back nitrogen by 10%, you will get money for that and you'll save money on the nitrogen. And what if you can do that without losing yield? That's the kind of stuff Truterra is doing. You can go to truterraag.com to learn more about this. It's not just carbon sequestration anymore. It's called ecosystem services. Frankly, I think this is where the future is going, and someday, eventually, you might be required to do it. So why not get ahead of the curve and figure out how you can improve your environment by also improving your farm environment and your soil by doing some practices that will make you money. truterraag.com/enroll. Just go there and check it out. And you know what? Tell them I sent you if they send somebody out. All right, Luke. You went away to get some schooling. Tryon University, about 100 miles, about 60 miles up the road.
Yeah.
Tell me about getting away from the farm, because people that really have the farm gene want to farm.
Yep.
And I think the most important thing you should do is get the hell away for a few years. You did. Tell me about going away to school and what you learned by going away.
Okay, first thing, I got to give a shout out to, Coach Lefevre, Mark Lefevre. He was the football coach at Southern Wells. Anyway,
Yep.
The best advice he ever gave me, probably the best advice I've ever gotten in my life, was you need to leave. You need to get out of here. You need to go away, because that farm will always be there.
Uh-huh.
And at the time, I was going to be all homesick and all that, whatnot. So I went up there and played 2 years of football and had a great time. And my third year, I went back and I was like, this ain't for me anymore. I think I'm ready to go back. And called Dad. And about 2 weeks later, I got out of school, finished my degree at Ivy Tech, and I was back on the farm. So,
were you gone long enough?
Yeah, I was. Because when I left, Damian, I didn't love it,
Mm-hmm. Right.
I thought I did my whole life. I thought this is what I knew I was going to do. But when I was 19 and I went to college, I was like, I don't know. I don't know if this is for me. And after about 2 years, I figured out that it was.
Mm-hmm. Then you still did finish a degree because you thought it was still important enough, or maybe your old man said, you know what, if you already got a couple years in, let's go ahead and finish it up. So you did finish up.
Yep. Got my associates at Ivy Tech in business administration. So
What do you think
Um,
helped you? Because I just saw on social media the other day, and it was somebody trying to be funny. He says, "Yep, I went through life another day today, and I didn't use algebra." And they were trying to be funny, and
yeah.
I'm like, you know what? I did use algebra today because I was trying to figure out a number of how much a reduction was, and I absolutely just went through the algebraic thing in my head and divided this by this. So I thought it was interesting that they were making a joke that you've never needed algebra. I can say there's probably things that I sat in classrooms and I've never applied, but there's a hell of a lot of stuff that I still pull out of the classroom and use on a daily basis.
Oh yeah.
What did you learn taking a couple of years of higher learning that you say, yeah, I'm really glad I learned that?
Well, the first thing I figured out was I wasn't going to be an accountant because my second year in accounting too, I was like, yeah, this is not for me. But all jokes aside, I think it put into perspective that there's more life than Southern Wells County.
Mm-hmm.
You know
Mm-hmm.
how it is down here.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that really helped me see the world a little bit. I know Trine's not a big school, but it just helped me get out of this little cloud we have down here in rural Indiana,
Well,
And
it could be anywhere, by the way. It could be rural Nebraska. It could be rural
right.
Mississippi. It's the same story. There's the difference between the day you walk out of high school and just even a couple of years. It's not just a 2 years. I always said that the difference between 18 and 21 isn't 3 years. It's about 5 years. The difference between 21 and 25, that's not just 4 years. That's probably another 6 to 8 years. In other words, there ain't a whole hell of a lot necessarily that happens between 40 and 50. There's a hell of a lot that happens between 18 and 21. That's what you're talking about. And
Yeah.
it doesn't matter where you went away to do that. What do you wish you were more knowledgeable about? What's the one thing you're like, you know what? This is something that I actually, I know it's something I need to know more about, but I don't.
Um, soil health, crop health, as far as scouting, I'm pretty good at scouting weeds. But as far as crop nutrient, like what the crop needs when it's at V5 or V8, stuff like
Yep.
that, soil structure. I wish I knew more about that. I think I'm decently knowledgeable, but I can improve.
Agronomics. I wanted to be an agronomist when I was in high school, and I was an FFA soil judging, and I was all into that. And then I got to Purdue, and like somebody gave me a biochemistry book. I said, "Oh crap, this is going to be a tough one here." So I like it. I think it's remarkable that we probably know enough now to know that soil has so much more than we even ever really understood.
Right.
And you're probably at that. You're coming at it from a little different age and perspective. We're using biological products now, Luke. We're doing so much stuff. I think that in your farming career, we're going to look back and say, oh my God, can you believe that dad did this? Can you believe that grandpa did this? Can you believe that I did this 7 years ago? That's where I think we are with soils. Your thoughts?
Oh, I agree. I agree. And you're talking about carbon and all that. It's coming. It's coming. It's huge. And I think once we get more incentive to do it, then more people will do it. We've tried a few ryegrasses and stuff like that. And I think it does help certain soils, but the technology and anything that we do now, especially soil health, I can remember when I was a little kid doing things that we did. And I look back now and 20 years later, like, why the hell did we do that?
Mm-hmm. Well, I've been saying for a while that we will look back someday at the excessive amounts of tillage. Yeah. And it's going to be the way we look now and say, do you know that 300 years ago, if you were sick, they put leeches on you and let it suck your blood out, thinking it was going to make you well? That's how we're going to look at all this tillage someday. Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. And we're already doing less than what we used to. Like, for example, now the corn stalks, they get vertical tilled. One pass in the fall, we come in, no till it in the spring. The bean stubble, we rip them, but we don't deep till. We use like an inline subsoiler. So just in my 10 years back farming, that's changed.
Yeah. What did you said? Where do you do the deep line stuff?
In front of our corn, inline ripping. We do that in front of all of our corn acres.
And I know that there's going to be people say, well, you got to, because we got these heavy soils and we got flat, we got some water issues. I even think that some of that is misguided. Do you think that you're going to be doing as much of this ripping 5 years from now? Because I don't think you will.
I don't think we will. No, but there are certain soils where I do think it helps, and I think it's a yearly thing, But if you get soil structure built up,
Yeah.
You probably don't need that.
I'd agree with that. Cover crops. You mentioned it, using some rye.
Yeah.
I know that I've heard all the excuses. Well, that won't work here. That's a farmer favorite right there. You
Yeah.
know, and I made the crack. I've heard it from state to state. Well, you can do that over there in Ohio, but that never work here. I've heard it by county. I've heard it by township. Like it's 4 freaking miles away. Hey, can't do that here. Anyway, I've heard why cover crops won't work. And I disagree. Are you going to be doing more cover crops 5 years from now than you do right now?
Oh yeah. Yes, we are. And I think there'll be more government funding for it too. The problem I see with it right now, Damian, is there's really no money in it. And to get farmers to try something, you know how we are.
Yeah.
You got to throw something at it.
Yeah. Well, you know, if you say, well, the benefit is some soil health, that's still a little bit misunderstood. And the operator would be a little skeptical. If you got slopey ground, you certainly can see the erosion. So that would be the thing. But it's not caught on yet. And I'm not sure I exactly know why, because we've been kind of dilly-dallying around cover crops for a decade or so, and it still hasn't really caught mass appeal.
Right. My biggest thing is we've had some good successes with it. For me, it's hard to switch to, like, for say, no-tilling corn into it.
Mm-hmm.
You know, we've never really no-tilled corn, and I know that's just the practice that we might have to change someday. But that's our biggest thing. We like it over there by where you used to live on the rollier farms. We think it really does help that soil. So I think there's places for it.
Yeah, I think there's gonna be more of it, and I understand the adoption. Speaking of adoption, technology. Okay, you're supposed to be at the age where you're all about the new technology, and you know it happens to all of us.
Yep.
I think it's great that Congress is going to ban TikTok, because I never was able to figure out how to use the damn thing anyhow. But anyway, all joking aside, what is it that your old man, who's only a little younger than me, has struggled with, where you have come in and been the technological liaison to your dad?
I think it's the willingness to learn it. One thing about your generation is, Damian, you guys are all hard-headed, and you don't really like to change. So
they've been saying every group has said that about the group in front of them.
Yeah, right.
Since cavemen, but yeah.
You guys are just worse. But no, I've adapted. I love it. You know, why work hard at something when you can let it do? You know, you can let the machine do it for you. You know, for example, like auto steering your end rows. Well, instead of driving in your brand new planter into the tree, we could just auto steer that and keep away from the tree or the light pole or anything like that. And then that goes back to side dress and spraying, and I feel like you just got to open. It's not going backwards.
No, it's not going backwards. What about the employees? It's one thing to say, yeah, we got this person that's, trainable enough to put them, on a ripper, but I'm not sure I want to put them in the sprayer. I mean, because there's a learning curve. It's not that this person's dumb. It's just that this person might be 65 years old, used to farm for themselves. Great employee because they want something to do in the spring and the fall. But damn it, you can't take them into something and bring them up technologically. Does that happen?
Oh, no, it's easy for me because, I grew up with computers and I've done doing this my whole life. So you got to really try to train that to somebody that's operating the equipment. But our employees are very tech savvy when it comes to that. So we're very spoiled with that.
You talked about going away and then come back. Your football coach told you to get away. You did. You only went away for a couple of years. Maybe you should have gone away longer. You think you're just fine on that. But then you do come back, and then there's that thing about fourth generation. The good thing about not coming from much like me, I don't have this whole legacy hanging over my head. I don't have this. I mean, my grandpa milked cows for people for a living like a damn sharecropper. There's not a lot of legacy pressure there on you. All I got to do is better than being a herdsman.
Right.
There's a little pressure on you. You feel it?
I don't feel the pressure. I always felt welcomed. I think it's because I was so involved when I was a young kid, as you know. But not once did I ever feel like dad or grandpa wanted me to come back because I had to.
Yeah.
I think they're proud. They won't say that, but but I never felt the pressure. No, but I do think it's neat that I could say that, we're farming the same ground that my great grapple farm. That's pretty cool.
It is cool. And there's legacy there. And that's something that's very rich in agriculture. I mean, it happens in family businesses also. I mean,
Yep.
my family's owned this restaurant for 71 years or whatever. That's a cool thing. There's
Yep.
also a pressure. Like when your old man retired a month ago, he could have said, "Don't mess this up, kid."
Yep. Yep. No, he never said that. You know how he is. He's a man of words.
Luke Roush, I said in my business book, the one that's over my, I guess that'd be my right shoulder right there.
Yep.
I said in there that there's 4 traits of success, and this is entrepreneurial stuff. You could make the argument that a farmer is not really an entrepreneur, where like they didn't like start and invent something. But then again, I can make the argument that you are entrepreneurial. You already talked about diversification of income, making sure that you understand your employees so you can expand and be prosperous with the necessary help you need. So I'd say you've got a degree of entrepreneurialness if you're running your business. Everybody does. If I say there's 4 entrepreneurial traits that'll help you be successful: risk tolerance, drive and ambition, resilience, and vision. Look into the future.
Yep.
I know which one. I can put mine in order: 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Yeah.
Can you?
Yes.
You want to start with the one you're best at, or the one you're worst at?
I'll start with the one that I'm worst at. Probably. I don't think I'm horrible at it, but I think that's my worst one is risk tolerance.
Mm-hmm.
And I don't think it's that I can't tolerate it. It's that maybe I don't understand what the consequences could be, to the full extent, because I haven't went through the 1980s like my grandpa has, and he talks about it all the time. And I listen, and I'm not saying that it can't happen, but I think that's where a lot of that comes from, if that makes sense.
It makes a lot of sense. And the reality is, I remember years ago, I was friends with an old man that was in World War II. And, he like spent 2 winters sleeping under his tank as a tank commander. You're talking about a pretty tough old son of a bitch. And I had such respect for him. I was drinking a beer. He was drinking O'Doul's because he was so old and beat up. He couldn't, he's, I'm not a blue nose. I would drink a beer, but I've got such damage to my back. Yeah, sorry. So he's having O'Doul's. And I said, Stan, the tough part is there's nobody my generation that could probably do what you did.
Yep.
And he was never judgmental. He's kind of said, well, you don't know what a good person can do when they're forced into it. Now, granted, not everybody could, but he said, when you have to, and that's a little bit like you talking about it. We're not telling you, oh God, you have no idea what it's like. You never slept under your tank. You never made it through the 80s farm crisis. They ain't saying you couldn't. You just haven't had to.
Right. Exactly. That's a great example. Great example.
And by the way, many of your peers probably couldn't. I mean, because that's just like many of your grandpa's peers didn't.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right.
The 80s washed out. It's not like everybody made it past that war either.
No, is there a number out there on how many farmers went bankrupt in the 80s?
There is, and I don't know it.
Okay.
The way I kind of tell people that are of the next generation, because I was a kid during that, but I'm an observer. That's why I made it in comedy. I'm a good observer. I pay attention. The one thing that I tell anybody is I'm not going to talk about walking uphill to school through blizzards or any of that, but I can tell you the 80s were bad enough in our part of the world, meaning Indiana, where you and I are from. They're truly, first off, there were 3rd and 4th generation farming operations that folded. We were on a shoestring coming from nothing, and labor-intensive, low-capital operation. We made it through when well-capitalized, multi-generational operations folded. That's number one. So that's something I'm proud of. That was me out there as a 12-year-old making that shit happen. Right. There's another part that most people don't get. In the 80s, there were some assets that were so bad, the bank wouldn't even repossess them. That's a true story. You can talk to old bankers who are like, yeah, things were so upside down and backwards, we didn't even repossess. We didn't even want that back. That's how bad things were.
Wow. That's
risk tolerance. Number 4. You say that's your worst thing because you're not sure that you're not sure it's a strength of yours or it's your least strength of the 4. What's your number 1? What's the thing of risk tolerance, drive, resilience, or vision? Which one is your strong?
Drive. I've always been a driven person in anything that I've did in my life, and I take pride in that. And I have goals, and we'll get to them.
It's important to have goals. I agree with that. Incidentally, mine out of that four is resilience. Mrs. Mason gave me probably the best comment about Cried. It was a year or two ago after my whole career changed.
Yeah.
About the time I met you, things were pretty well washed. I'd been through about four ringers by then. 9/11, the whole pandemic, shutting down businesses. About a year and a half ago, I started shining again. And Lori said, Damian, they will knock you down, but I swear to God, they never knock you out.
Yep.
And I'm like, I think that's the biggie that you're just talking about with your grandpa in the 80s. The ability to just continually get back up after being knocked down is a big one that might be coming. What most excites you about ag moving forward?
The opportunities. There's a ton of opportunities, as you all know. A lot of farmers that are between you and retirement age in our area. That excites me to expand. I'm excited about the technology. I really think we'll reach a peak of having all this big glamorous equipment, and then all of a sudden one day we're going to wake up and it's not going to be worth anything because I'm going to be sitting here talking to you farming. I really think it's going to happen by the time I retire. And
By the way, if you're listening to this podcast versus watching it, I've been nodding my head to everything that Luke just said right there because I'll go back to the first one, the opportunity. There are those that say a young person can't make it in agriculture. I shot a podcast about this. It's going to be released at some point. Maybe it already has been by the time you're hearing this. But the point is, I get so tired of hearing that because I've had to hear that forever. I heard it back when I was a kid. Are there huge capital requirements? Yes, yes, yes. The point is, here there's very little opportunity to say start an airline. Okay, like because there's four great big massive ones, but to pretend there's no opportunity in ag is an asinine statement.
Yeah.
Is there opportunity to start out automatically with 20,000 acres of wheat property? Maybe not, but there's opportunity within all this, and I agree with you.
Yeah, yeah, that and like I said, the technology. And okay, I can remember when I was growing up, Damian, we got 45 bushel beans, and we were like, damn, those were good.
Mm-hmm.
If we get anything under 50 now, we feel like it's a failure.
Mm-hmm.
Same with corn.
Yeah.
We showed a field 180 bushel corn this year, and we're like, damn, we thought it was better than that. 15 years ago, if that same field would have made 180, we would have did cartwheels. So I'm excited about where technology is going with everything.
Yeah. Yeah, I agree with that. You just talked about, first off, the crop technology. I shot a video in June in one of my fields where the corn looked really quite good. And I said, it was the end of June. I said, we've had 1.2 inches of rain this whole month.
Yep.
And the wind has been persistently blowing about 10 to 15 miles per hour, and the temperatures have been in the 90s more than not. That's like a convection oven. I said, when I was a kid, this stand of corn would be maybe not even in existence, but certainly it'd be terrible. And
right.
And in the 1940s or 50s, it would be blowing away.
Right.
That's because of technological advances. So I agree with you. It's exciting to see what we can do with less resources. And that's something that is a good ag story. And I agree with you about the machinery that's going to continue to evolve. What concerns you? You look forward. It's what excites you. What concerns you when you look forward, future of ag?
Well, this hits home for us, but solar panels. I don't think people realize, unless you're the actual landowner, what it's going to do to auctions, cash rent, just land prices in general, taxes.
To the person that is not familiar, what he's talking about here is, even in Indiana, where it's only sunny 1/3 of the days, we got solar developments coming in, and they put a price out that is, in most cases, 3 to 4 times what a normal rent rate would be. Yep. And what that ends up doing is distorts the market.
Yep. And if the 3,000 acres goes in, right around this area, you know what that'll do to cash rent, and it's already inflated.
Yeah.
That's my biggest concern, honestly, in our small area.
Yeah.
I guess another one would be the food fads, like in your book on your left shoulder.
Yeah.
I think people are a little delusional when it comes to that.
Yeah, and the thing is, that has been the case really for quite some time, where the consumer is pretty disconnected. The good thing is, um, the consumer in the United States and in North America has at least continually had a willingness to, there's more opportunity for fad food than there ever was. I mean,
Yep.
my God, even in rural Indiana, where we're from, you can go to the grocery store and see all kinds of exotic stuff that's maybe an opportunity. Again, it might be an opportunity to produce some of this stuff.
Yep, you're right. You're
But
right.
I look at that as both a challenge with a disconnected consumer, but also an opportunity.
Yes.
All right, what did we not ask? What did we not cover? You got your notes there, Luke Roush. My last thing on the way out the door. What did we not talk about that we needed to?
Oh, when did you know when I wanted to be in production agriculture?
Yeah, well, see, because most people, I told you before we hit record, there's only 3 of the 9 Mason kids that have the agriculture gene.
Yep.
Did you get the agriculture gene, period? Or do you think, was it born into you, or you think driving around the truck with your old man? When did you know you said, I want to be in this business?
I felt it my whole life, honestly. And like I said, when I got in my late teen years and thought I was cool and all that, I got a little disconnected. But then when I went away, it came back. But you can ask anybody that knew me when I was a little kid. I was never not in the tractor. I was always farming carpet, and I think I always knew this is where I was supposed to be.
And there you are. All right. His name's Luke Roush. It's been a good segment. That's perspective from a 4th-generation, 30-year-old farmer, and he used to be my neighbor farm kid. Good stuff here about weaknesses, about strengths, about what you know, what you don't know, challenges you have. You did a good job. I'm gonna tell your old man you're a better talker than him.
Hey, thank you. I appreciate that.
His name's Luke Roush. You can find him on social media. He's got great stuff on Facebook, but also if you want to pass this on to anybody that you think can benefit from this discussion, please do so. My name's Damian Mason. Thanks for being here, Mr. Roush.
Hey, see you, buddy.
Till next time, this is the Business of Agriculture. Hey, thanks for being here. This episode of the Business of Agriculture was brought to you by Pattern Ag. You've heard me talk about Pattern Ag because I think it's a pretty cool concept. New technology that allows you to predict the problems you're going to have and therefore treat them before those problems cost you money. What kind of problems am I talking about? Pests and disease. Things like cordon rootworm, sudden death syndrome, cyst nematode, and a whole bunch of other bad things that happen out there in the field that can cost you money. Guess what? Pattern Ag will let you find out ahead of time if the disease or the pest pressure is there, and therefore you're treating it before it costs you any money. What a great concept. Go to pattern.ag, that's www.pattern.ag, to learn more about their product, their technology, how it can make you money, save you yield, and also where you can find a rep that can come out there and do the work for you. Pattern.ag.